All right, welcome to the Rebel Walk Recruiting Show with Leanne Herring. I am your host, Stephen Willis, here on this magical mystery tour we call Ole Miss Football Fandom. We're going to talk about the group of commits that came in last weekend. We're going to show a little highlights of each one, and we're going to talk about somebody on down the road for today's show. So it should be pretty special. Leanne, how you doing?
Doing good, doing good. Like you said last week, you take a couple days off, and then all of a sudden, out of the blue, we have these four commits. Starting out with Jacarius Clayton, which is a big, huge commit on the defensive end of the ball. A big flip from Mississippi State to Ole Miss. It's going to add a lot of talent, and he's going to be a key building block player that I think is going to be a key variant in the upcoming rebuilding of the defense.
Yeah, I really like Jacarius Clayton. He's a big kid. He reminds me a little bit of somebody like Marcus Tillman back in the day when I worked at Ole Miss. He's kind of a 4-3 run-stuffing defensive end, or he can play a defensive end in a 3-4. Once again, the word of the day is versatility when it comes to these prospects Ole Miss are signing and one-on-one winners.
Exactly, and I think that's what we're seeing a lot of in the 2022 class. It may not necessarily be a lot of the names we know on a national scale, but we're keeping a lot of in-state talent. We're keeping a lot of regional talent, 3 and 4 and 5-star kids, especially on the defense. And like you said, if the key is having players that are versatile, that have either played, several roles on the offense or defense, like a kid like Jacarius Clayton, he's played various roles on the D-line. He started out as a tight end that transitioned to a D-end, and when you see his film and when you see him from his sophomore to his junior season, he's definitely gotten stronger, and he's improved a lot on coming off the ball a lot faster. And he's a consistent pass rusher, and he's going to be an explosive playmaker. Like I said, with these types of players like Jacarius Clayton, these in-state kids that we see a lot of, they're only going to get better as their senior year progresses and as we get them on campus. So like I said, this is a big win that we had a feeling that we are going to get, but like anything with recruiting, it's never set in stone until you hear it from the horse's mouth. And like I said, last weekend, getting that commit from Jacarius Clayton on the defensive front is going to be a big, huge addition for this 2022 class in this rebuilding of our defensive front line.
Yeah, when you watch this kid in Tupelo playing in high school and coming off, you can look at it and honestly tell that he's at about 50% of his potential. So the sky's the limit when he gets coached up by Randall Joyner or by Marquise Watson and those guys on the defensive line. And there's just several places he could fit in with this team.
Exactly, and that's the key, like you said, because we're in a rebuilding stage, because we're recruiting a lot of different players at different stages in their career, in their high school career, depending when we get them on campus, whether they're, early enrollees, mid-year enrollees. Like I said, we have to be able to recruit type of kids that can fit in any system, and can fit and be versatile. And like I said, the key to this recruiting game in this 2022 class is going to be a lot of players, especially on the defensive front, that we're going to get to fit in our system is kids that can play a lot of roles and have experience in a lot of roles. So that's why, like I said, landing a kid like Jacarius Clayton is going to be crucial. And I think from the time on, as we see, a little bit going into the fall, we're going to be seeing a lot more players that are going to be fitting this type of model as recruiting goes on for Ole Miss, is versatile players that we can develop.
Yes, and that's the defensive line. Let's move over to the offensive line. I'm going to try to pronounce this name. Timmy Gagofian?
That's kind of right. Yeah, I was going Gothian too. Like I said, sorry if we're mispronouncing the names, but yeah, this is another huge pickup for the Rebels. We haven't been talking a lot about the offensive side of the ball, especially the offensive line. So the next two kids we're going to be talking about are huge, building blocks in our offensive lines. Starting with Timmy, like we said, he's out of Elite Hastings, out of Houston, Texas. 3-star prospect, big frame, big kid, 6'6", 290. He's the overall number 56 tackle in the 2022 class, and he's the overall 92 player in the state of Texas. Like I said, when you look at this kid, he's obviously a big dude, and he's another player that I like is going to be a project and develop, but he's going to bring a lot of interesting key components once he gets under Coach Thorne, once he gets under Levy, and he starts working, and getting on campus. Like I said, he's got an ideal frame for a tackle, and he's got those wide hips, and he finishes his block. No matter what happens, in his play, you always see this kid finish his blocks. Like I said, he's a bit of a project. He's gonna need some development, working on his feet, and then also working on his pass protection. But I think that this is going to be a key pickup, like and another building block on building a stronger offensive line.
Yeah, and if you look at all of this going on with players, one of the big problems you have in the state of Texas is overdeveloped players. You kind of get what they are. There's not really much room to mold them into what you're doing. I view that as a negative. Some colleges view that as a positive. But with this kid, he is actually a raw player. There's some work to do to get him where he wants to be, and there's a level or two that he can get to.
Exactly, and you said it. In the state of Texas, because football is such a center when it comes to it, like you said.
Yeah, let's move on to Preston Cushman, a very athletic offensive lineman. Me personally, I project him to be an interior offensive lineman, maybe a guard, possibly a center because he is so athletic. The player comp that you think of and that you see immediately is Ben Brown on campus right now. It's the similar type player. Go ahead.
Big guy, 6'5", 285, out of Florida, Calvary Christian. He, like you said, first thing you see when you look at him is his athleticism and obviously his length. But he's played all positions on that line. But I don't see him as a tackle. I would agree with you. I think that he's going to find great success at either the guard or the center, like you said, in a Ben Brown type position. And he's another player that you don't know a lot about, but he's got a lot of raw potential. But I agree with you on that part. I see this kid really, really shining and flourishing in the right system as a center at the guard position.
Yeah, I think on August 28th, he's playing a game like 15 minutes from my house. And I may go out and just put eyes on him during the game and watch him play and see exactly what works. And now, he plays at Calvary Christian, which I believe is a smaller type private school in Florida. So I don't know. There might be a red shirt that's mandatory for this guy just because the level of play is going to be a real big swing. But he's a super athletic player, and he's really toolsy. Yeah, and the last commit that we got was Jeremiah Dillon. He's at Tylertown High School now, but he is going to be a little bit underrated by services because he played at Park Lane last year. He played in the MEIS, and he has a chance now to show off. He finished like second or third in the 100 meters in Mississippi this year. Is that correct?
The radar. A lot of the kids in the 2022 class, with Ole Miss, what we're seeing is a lot of under the radar, but they're kids that we can work with and they can develop. And Jeremiah Dillon is no difference. When you look at his film, I like to call this kid the Mr. Reliable, and I think he's going to be really special impact player on special teams. And what I really thought stood out about him is you have those, those wide receivers that you have, obviously, that you want to that have speed and that can make the catch. But you also want those wide receivers who can make plays after the catch, and they're not afraid to fight for those yards in those key situations. And he's one of those kids. He's not afraid to make contact. He's not afraid to fight to get those extra yards. He's got great hands. And another thing about this kid, he's rarely gonna waste a play. If he can make a play beyond his catch, like I said, whether it's in yardage, whether it's moving the chains, everything, this kid is gonna do it. And what I like about him, like when you notice him, when you look at him, is his speed. He's got great speed on the outside and he gets good separation. And I think that this makes him attractive in a Lane Kiffin Levy offense because whether you have a QB like Matt Corral or you have a QB, when you have a player like Dillon who can create that separation, who can get open super fast and become a target, I think that, when you mix it with a kid, like Plumlee, who's fast in the middle, and then you have a kid like Dillon who's fast on the outside, that's creating double speed, which makes it difficult for defenses to keep on coverage, which I think could be really explosive if in the right situation. So that's what I like about this kid. Like I said, he's got great speed on the outside. He gets good separation, good hands, but he's never going to waste a play. He's always going to be that after the yardage catch kind of guy and still keep going for the play if he can make it. And I said, I think he's going to be an impact player on special teams.
Yeah, he's a really good player. He could fit in. He definitely is going to. His athleticism is going to allow him to contribute. His elite speed is going to allow him to compete for a starting job eventually when he gets here. There's going to be players like J.J. Henry and those guys in the slot. This is the prototypical slot receiver of this Lane Kiffin offense. This is a J.J. Henry. This is Elijah Moore. There might be different styles of play within that slot position, but you're looking for certain benchmarks, and this player, even though he's right now a low-rated 3-star, he fits them. It's so smooth watching him play. He's just a weapon on the outside and can outrun everybody.
Exactly. And like you said, a lot of people talk about why are we, sometimes they call it, oh, well, they're over-recruiting this position. I think with the kind of offense that we run at Ole Miss, you can never over-recruit, like you said, that benchmark player because of the explosiveness and the quick pace. We have to remember, yes, we have our star guys that we work with constantly, but keeping that offense fresh because we don't know, how long we're going to be on that field. So being able to have extra weapons, to complement our starting guys. And with a kid, like Dillon being in that backfield once he gets, that time. And then those are the type of kids that you want to have in your back pocket because they can be just as effective. They can create just as much chaos in that backfield for that defense, given the right situation, given the right place. And like I said, it helps keep our offense fresh and it keeps helping it get reloaded time and time again. So I never think that we can recruit too many wide receivers.
Yeah, it's absolutely outstanding. And those are the commits from last weekend. Now, we do have a couple of players that we want to get into. What are some of the news and who exactly are they?
Well, one of the players that I want to focus on since we're talking about offense, that that the coaches, the team is really high up on and also has strong ties to Ole Miss is another 2022 4-star wide receiver out of Dutch Fork, South Carolina, Antonio Williams. He's the number 24 wide receiver, and he's the number 5 overall player in the state of South Carolina, according to the 247 composite. And you might know his stepdad, Murphy Holloway, who played hoops. That's the tie to Ole Miss. And he made it unofficial back on June 18th. It went really well. Right now, it's Ole Miss and South Carolina that are pretty much, it seems, in the top 2 positions fighting for this kid. Right now, everybody has him going to South Carolina. He did just announce that he was going to have some official visits because, every player gets 5, and 2 of his 5 are going to be, the first one's going to be on September 24th to South Carolina, and then long and behold, he's going to make his second official visit on October 22nd during LSU weekend to Oxford. So that should be a good stage for the Rebels and a good selling point, for Antonio Williams. But let's talk a little bit about, him as a player. He's got this great speed. like most that you want in most wide receivers. Now, it's not that explosive, high octane energy, speed, but the speed that he has is that breakaway speed. I like to relate it to a thoroughbred, a Kentucky Derby thoroughbred. On the track, they're able to have this intense speed where they're able to create this great separation as the play progresses. He may not be the biggest when you look at his size and his stats. They have him at 6 feet, 180, but he's got some amazing moves that can make tacklers miss him. And again, going back to the speed that he has this great breakaway speed that he makes defensive coverage very difficult because they miscalculate him. When he seems like he's going to go one way on his route, he is able to make an explosive breakaway and go on another way. Like I said, he's got solid separation, good hands, and he's just an overall player that is just very well rounded. Another speedy player, good hands, good consistency. He's again another benchmark wide receiver that would be ideal to fit in Lane Kiffin's offense.
Yeah, the player comp would obviously be Elijah Moore. I mean, he looks a lot like Elijah out there playing the wide receiver position. He's kind of got that phone booth quickness to go along with his great speed.
Yeah, so like I said, he's going to be, I think, like I said, I think that there's a good possibility that I think this is a kid that will go head to head with South Carolina, and, Auburn, Georgia, and Clemson are also not far behind. But like I said, I think that this is a kid that will go, obviously, because of his ties to the university. And of course, a kid like him, when you see him and his talent, you're going to go hard in recruiting him, especially in the offensive weapons. Like I said, we can never have too many offensive weapons in our backfield, and Antonio Williams is one of those kids.
Outstanding. Let's look at the 2023s real quick. We're going over it with the Manning Passing Academy happening. There's obviously some news breaking about Arch Manning and a potential unofficial visit at Oxford. Have you heard anything?
Well, I think that we're hearing, that it's July 28th, which doesn't surprise me because it's close enough to the picnic and whatnot that are hosting recruits and everything. And pretty much, I think it's kind of one of those things. It's a day by day with the Mannings. Cooper talked about it to the Clarion Ledger, that despite what people may think, assuming because of him being a Manning, that, he knows the program inside out. Sure, it's one thing for Arch to go there as a young boy, as he stated, an experience, but it's another thing to go as a recruit. I think with this visit is him getting to know Kiffin and Coach Kiffin and, Levy, and really see what that aspect is of being a recruit. So that'll be an interesting visit. Like I said, he's already made visits to Clemson and Texas, and he worked really magical with the kid that we talked about that I hope that we get on the board. That's one to look at, another 2023. I mentioned him last show. 5-star running back, Reuben Owens out of El Campo. Him and Arch Manning threw a couple passes to the Texas camp that just had these great connections. So it would be nice to see that combination in the fall over in Oxford. And then, like I said, or also possibly to another 2023 wide receiver that we talked about last show out of Del Valley, Braylon James. Those are two kids that have relationships over in Texas. And like I said, Reuben Owens has a little bit of relationship with Arch Manning, already getting comfortable in that position. So again, those are some of the 2023 classes, kids that I would like in the ear and all that kind of stuff. But like I said, as far as Manning, I think that, it's going to unravel how it's going to unravel. I know there's a lot of pressure for him, obviously, to entertain Ole Miss and everything, but you got to remember, the kid is going to go where he's going to feel like a fit, and it may not be Ole Miss, and that may not be what our fans want to hear. But like I said, I think it'll come down to Ole Miss, Clemson, and Texas for Arch Manning, and I feel like Texas and Clemson are going to make a very strong push aside from us.
Yeah, so far the Arch Manning recruitment is going just like the Eli Manning recruitment. If you're old enough to remember that, everybody assumed he was going to Texas all the way through it. Virginia popped up on the radar whenever he announced the decision. He chose Ole Miss. So you can't really tell. They're going to enjoy it. They are going to print articles based off of his name. Just understand
exactly.
that.
Exactly. And I think, and we have to understand whether, regardless of the Mannings or anything, like I say, for these 2022 kids and even these 2023 kids, they've had a very different type of recruitment. And whether they're a 5-star kid that we know, or, a no-star kid that is, wanting to get them. We have to let them enjoy their recruitment. And I want, at the end of the day, you want kids that want to come play and fit in your program, regardless of who they are, because they ultimately will turn out to be the best players. And that's kind of my philosophy about it. We've talked about kids that we've got on the board, at Ole Miss, and we've talked about kids that we've wanted, that we've offered, that are off playing at Texas A&M, or they're off playing at other places, because you want these kids to go where they're going to be a fit. And that's kind of how I feel about recruitment. And there's still a long way to go to recruitment. I know that we have these kids that are hard commits, but we could very well lose some of them down the road, and we can very well gain some more during fall. And I think that fall for Ole Miss recruiting is going to be very crucial. And I think we're going to see a lot of surprise flips, because I can assure you that the coaches are working day in and day out and working some aces in the hole that we probably would never think might be thinking as a sit. But I think that when the fall, like I said, when we are able to get people into the Grove, and families and recruits, and they're able to come see what the game day atmosphere is and picture themselves in that uniform and picture themselves running out of that tunnel, along with the experience that comes with it, that is a whole different type of card that the Ole Miss recruiting is going to throw out. And I bet you that it's going to open a lot of eyes and land a lot of recruits that we might not think would be considering Ole Miss.
Yeah, I would not count this recruiting staff out for absolutely anybody. If we get them on campus, the important thing is to get them here. But anyway, for Leanne Herring, I'm Stephen Willis. Thank you for tuning in to the Rebel Walk Recruiting Show. We'll see you next time. Hotty toddy.
Hotty toddy.